Hey guys, in this video, I wanted to talk about what I believe is the most efficient and best way to handle the vignettes that you're going to find in CFA Level 2 and Level 3. Now, when I first started working these vignettes, I was really struggling to get them done in the allotted time. So basically, you're going to get 3 minutes per question, and I was timing myself working on them, and I would do a vignette of 6 problems, and I'd look at the time when I finished, and I'd taken more than the 18 minutes that I would have been allotted. I'd be done in like 20 minutes, and I was thinking, how are people doing this in the correct amount of time? And then I figured out I was basically just doing it all wrong, and there's like a really, in hindsight, obvious way to do it that I know now, where basically when I ended up actually taking the tests, I could finish the problems in just 2 minutes instead of three, and then I could sit there at the end and just check my work for as long as I felt like it. So let's go through, I'll show you how you can do this too. Now let's talk about how these vignettes work and how they're structured. So you're going to get this title that says, the following information relates to questions, and then it gives you a range. So for at least level 2, the question sets come in sets of 4 to 6 on actual test day. This one I just randomly picked as an example. This one has 6 questions in it. So we have this information here, a table called Exhibit 1, information here, table called Exhibit 2, more information, then finally we get to the first question. So question number 5, and we scroll down, we're going to see all these other questions, and it stops at 10. So I took screenshots of all this vignette stuff and just put it over in a place where we can see it all at one time. So this is the whole vignette, and basically this is just going to be like it starts here, you would go down this way, this is the end of the text, this is the first question, question 5, and then this is the last question, question 10. So what was I doing wrong that caused me to take too long and not be able to finish these questions in time? Well, when I first started doing vignettes, I almost thought of them as like a story with a narrative, and you needed to follow this narrative to try to answer these questions. And so I would just start up here at the very first sentence and just read and try to make sense of these things in my head and keep reading and try to make sense of what was going on in my head, and then read all the way through, read all this information, and then get to the first question. And then I would start working on this question and try to go back to wherever this might be and find it in the story and start working on it. But what I found was that by the time I was actually working on some of these questions, I kind of pretty much already forgot a lot of the information that related to that question in the text, because this is just way too much information to try to hold in your brain all at the same time. So what is the actual better way to go about solving these questions? Well, I figured out, and most people will come to this conclusion, it's probably sort of obvious, it took me a little while to figure it out, but basically all these things are linear. They go in the same order. Like, I'll show you what I mean. So I wouldn't even read this information at first. I would just go over to the very first question, read the question, and then try to go back to the start of the vignette text to figure out what pertains to this question and only look at that. So let's do an example of that. Which of this person's statements regarding ETF mechanics is correct? Statement 1, 2, or 3. So I'll start from the very top and I'll scroll down until I see statement 1, 2, or 3. There we go. Statement 1, 2, and 3. Statement 3 ends there. So probably all I really need to solve this problem is just this text right here. Probably this is the only thing relevant to me for this one. So then I'll probably read the sentence that leads up to it. And usually this first paragraph in these vignettes is just some sort of like introductory text that you don't even really need to know, but it just like sets the ground for the whole story. So now I can probably solve this question with only this text in mind. I don't have to think about anything else. So maybe I do that and I solve this question. Now we'll go down to the next question, 6. Given the current pricing for ETF 1, the most likely transaction to occur is that, and then we have these 3 options. So now I'll just start wherever I left off on the last one, right? I left off at this line. I'm just going to start here and start scanning until I find ETF 1. So, okay, great. I see ETF 1 right there. All right, let's keep going. I don't see ETF1 listed anywhere here. So I think all I probably need to do to solve this question 6 here is just use the information in this paragraph most likely. So I'm just going to try to solve question 6 with only this text in mind. So then maybe I solve it that way. Now I'll go on to the next one. Question 7, which ETF in Exhibit 1 is most likely to have the lowest tracking error? So I see Exhibit 1, and then I see my options are ETF 2, 3, and 4. So I'll just start where I left off the last time, which was at this paragraph. Okay, we're evaluating 3 ETFs. That sounds good. Some stuff about these ETFs. I see Exhibit 1 right here, and I see ETF 2, 3, and 4. So I know this is relevant. Now I'll look down here. This guy discussed the factors that influence ETF bid-ask spreads, and then they're talking about bid-ask spreads and some things about them. So that has nothing to do with ETF 2, 3, and 4. So to solve this one, this question 7 here, all I need to do is consider this information right here. So with only this in mind, I will now try to solve question 7. Maybe I do. So let's say I finished that one. Now I'll move down to question 8. Question 8. So this guy's statement about quoted bid-ask spreads is incorrect with respect to, and then I have these 3 options. So now I'm looking at this bid-ask spread thing. So I have 3 options: amount of ongoing order flow, cost and risks with, and for liquidity providers, and then something about market makers. So I see they were talking about the bid-ask spreads here, right? I just go from where I stopped the last time. And then he's saying, it looks like 3 things: 1, 2, and 3. So this is the order flow. I see order flow. That's the first one, order flow. Then the next one, costs and risk for liquidity. I see the second one here has something about liquidity. And then the third one here, let's see, amount of competition among market makers. I see something after the third one about market makers. So all I need to do to solve this question 8 right here is just use the information within this paragraph. That's it. So I'll only consider that, and then I'll work on solving this. Now I'll go to question 9. Which ETF in Exhibit 2? Okay, so I see Exhibit 2, most likely to trade at the largest premium or discount relative to net asset value. My options are ETF 5, 6, and 7. So now I'm going to go where I stopped the last time and look at, okay, so we have ETFs, net asset value, so that's relevant. Exhibit 2, 3 ETFs. So we see Exhibit 2, then we have ETF 5, 6, and 7. And then let's go down. This guy considers a new ETF investment for the fund. He plans to own it. So this is like a new ETF. I don't think it has anything to do with those. So I'm going to draw a line here. And I'm going to assume that all I need to know to answer question 9 might be this little information right here. So I'll do question 9 there. And then this table here. That's all I'm going to consider as I try to answer this. And then finally, question 10. I'm just going to go down. Okay, so we're talking about excluding compound effect, expected total holding period. Try to say that. Try to say these 4 words in a row really fast. Okay, over a 9-month period. So then I have 3 numerical options. So I look at this. I'm just going to start where I stopped the last time, go down, okay, 9 months, and then I'm given some numbers. So I'm going to assume probably all I need to do to solve this one is just use that information right there. So while your initial thought is to think of this as some large narrative that you need to follow, almost like some story in a book, it's not. It's just, you could literally take any of these sections of information and just extract it and put it into its own little practice problem with the question. Like I could just take this text, remove it, and pair it with this and give you this problem, and it would not even matter that you missed any of the other text at all. So I make lecture videos for one of the 3 largest CFA prep providers, UWorld, and when we do practice problems in our videos, all we do is we just take out the relevant question, the relevant text and the relevant question, put them together and ignore the rest of the vignette, and it doesn't even cause any problem at all. So just think of these as individual questions and only think of the information that's pertinent to that question. You're basically trying to lower your cognitive load by not trying to consider all this stuff, only the relevant thing at the relevant time. Now, if you enjoyed this video, I do make lecture videos, like I said, with UWorld. You can get steeply discounted CFA prep courses using the links in the description of this video or in the pinned comment. And please feel free to subscribe for more content just like this on my channel. Thank you.